The Mariners are still playing terrible baseball, but they remain in first place for the time being, and the opportunity to add reinforcements is looming closer. We'll answer some of your questions about the state of the team, about the deadline, and more coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, July 8th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to be opening up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. But before we get into this week's batch, shout out to our title sponsor today, Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals by calling 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. All right, let's kick things off here on Mailbag Monday with a question from Ryan, who asks, when will we see trade movement? Is it after the draft when things start to pick up?
This is why we talk about it. Either bring back the waiver deadline or move the actual trade deadline back a couple weeks, because now you're jamming like these pretty much like the most important things that front offices do in the middle of a year. Like you're jamming all of that in the same 3-week stretch, and it makes it really hard for them to concentrate on one thing versus the other. So after the All-Star game is when we'll start to see some movement, or we'll start to hear at least some more firm, like, hey, they're shopping this guy, instead of like, oh, it's possible that team X shops team Y. So, right now we're getting just a lot of speculation and whispers. I think we'll get firm rumors right after the All-Star game, a couple days after the All-Star game, and then we'll start to see like actual trades go down probably a week after that. There have been some trades already. Obviously the Austin Slater trade last night, and then the big trade so far has been Aaron Savale. So I do think that one is sizable enough. But yeah, I think in terms of like the Luis Robert and the Garrett Crochet and, Cody Bellinger and blah, 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 like all the big names that are rumored to be available, I don't think we'll see one of those until at least another, I would say, 2 weeks would be my guess, is when we start to see like big names start to come off the board.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, for those of you that didn't see it, earlier today, Craig Mish, who's essentially the Ryan Divish of the Marlins beat sphere, said that the Mariners are a club to watch in regards to Jazz Chisholm. He also mentioned the Pirates and Royals, but kind of it seems like with the way that he worded it that he might view the Mariners as essentially the front runner in that regard. David wants to know, why did it take an injury to Julio Rodriguez for Victor Robles to make it into the lineup? In his limited time, he has a 136 WRC plus. Might as well kick the tires on him playing every day rather than putting Haniger and Canzone in the outfield. I mean, he's helped in most of the games that he's played in. Victor Robles has found a way to help, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it couldn't be much worse than what you're getting out of Mitch Haniger right now. Even if it doesn't work out, it can't be much worse than you're getting out of Dom Canzone right now. And at the very least, especially, compared to Mitch Haniger, Victor Robles gives you significantly better defense and better base running. So I'll take that over what we're getting right now.
Yeah, I would rather have Victor Robles up there than Mitch Haniger, than, Dom Canzone. And like you said, at the very least, I'm getting average or above average corner outfield defense and some speed, and apparently a guy who just mashes at T-Mobile Park, because that's one of the more impressive home runs we've seen this year. So batter's eye, who cares for Victor Robles? So I think we've talked about this a little bit. It's like, look, if you're gonna hit, if you can't hit, if you're gonna strike out a lot, then when you do put the ball in play, it has to be impactful. What's more likely, right? That Robles bloops a single and his speed is able to move him around the bases, or that Haniger pops a home run when he has 9 and like 300 plate appearances. Like, you kind of have to play the odds. And that's why I like playing Ryan Bliss more than they have. That's why I like having Dylan Moore in there and Robles. Like, at least put guys in who can run, who can move, who are athletic and can help you in more ways than one. So yeah, Robles probably should be playing more. At the very least, he should get pretty much all of Mitch Haniger's at bats. If they want to give Dom Canzone a little bit more runway, fine, whatever. But certainly he should be playing more than Haniger right now.
Yeah, this stat comes from Brennan at Pite Size Analyze on Twitter. Victor Robles, this was after the home run, so I think it's actually like 37 or 38 now, but Victor Robles has 36 batted ball events this year, 18 in Washington, 18 in Seattle, and 6 barrels this year. All of those barrels have come as a Seattle Mariner.
Yep. I mean,
so maybe he's figured something out. Maybe the Mariners, who have struggled to help their other hitters figure anything out this year, have actually helped Victor Robles turn things around in his
haters.
career.
Victor Robles, star. Take that. Mariners can't develop hitting. Boom, Robles.
Yeah, and they say hitters don't get better when they come to Seattle.
That's right. Boom. Victor Robles, the next Nelson Cruz.
We're gonna victory lap Victor Robles and his 6 ardent balls.
What else do we have, Ty?
Yeah.
What else do we have?
Nothing right now with regards to the offense. So I'll take it. I'll take any sort of positive. That's true too. Shout out to Luke Raley. Shout out to Victor Robles for making this offense at least somewhat watchable.
They scored 17 runs over the last 4 games.
And what's their record during that time, Colby?
2-2.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to answer more of your questions. It could be worse, possibly.
Could be.
Maybe.
Could be the Rangers.
True.
Could be the White Sox.
True. Fair. That's a good point. That's a good point.
You could not be in first place.
That's also true.
Things could be worse.
That is
Fact.
true. That is true. That is a fact. All right. So we're going to answer some of your questions in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks and once again, Tax Network USA. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And a general rule of thumb here, if they breathe air and they're scheduled to pitch against the Mariners, it's probably a good idea to pick more on their strikeouts. Download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Here on Locked On Mariners, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000. That's 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. See the link in this episode description. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Mariners are off today, but they'll get back after it tomorrow with a quick 2-game set down in San Diego. You can catch all the action with the Padres on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. Derek has a question here. Who is going to be a Mariner long-term and who isn't out of this group? Colt Emerson, Harry Ford, Cole Young, Lazaro Montes, Felton Celestin, Johnny Farmello, Ty Pete, Tyler Locklear, Jonathan Clase, Michael Arroyo. And I'm going to just leave the question up here so we can see all the names that are available to us. So
what's long-term?
I think makes their MLB debut with the team at least.
This feels like a backwards way of asking us who gets traded this summer.
Yeah, or traded in the winter, or traded next year. I mean, quite a few of these guys are a ways off.
Okay.
I would just view it as they at least make their debut with the Mariners.
Okay. Emerson, Young, Laz.
Ooh, okay.
Locklear's already made his debut, so he's out. That's it. Emerson, Young, Laz.
You think they're going to keep Laz? All right.
I mean, I wouldn't. Like, it's not that guy wouldn't keep him. I would be more aggressive in trading him than most people listening to us would be. But no, I think that they're going to have a hard time finding somebody who's going to value him as much as they do. So I think they'll shop Farmelo, and I mean, Feldman probably shouldn't be on this list because who the heck knows? And Locklear, obviously his inclusion kind of makes it seem like this isn't like, who's going to make their debut, because Locklear already has. And so is Clase, by the way.
Sure.
But Emerson, Young, and Montez. I think everybody else has a very good chance of being traded before they make their debut, or before they stick around long enough to say like, oh yeah, they're long-term Mariners.
I feel like Farmelo's going to be here.
Could be. I almost went Farmelo over Montez. I could see both of them. It's really hard for me to imagine Farmelo gets traded this summer just because of the injury.
Yeah.
But Farmelo's a really good prospect. There's going to be a lot of teams interested in him. So Emerson, here's the deal. The only one like I am like really confident is absolutely going to be here in, let's say 3 years from now, is Emerson. And even that's like 50-50. It's not 100%. It's not like Julio back in the day,
Sure.
But I'll say Emerson, Young, and Montez. Everybody else I think is pretty high probability of getting traded. I mean, even Young and Montez have a pretty high probability of getting traded, just not quite as high as everybody else on the list.
I'll go Emerson, Young, Farmelo. It's not like we had to pick three or anything like that, but
no.
If I had to pick three, I would go Emerson, Young, and Farmelo.
Yeah, and I guess just playing the percentages, Felton Celestin would never play for the Mariners because he would flame out before he even got close. Like if you're just playing the odds of a 17-year-old, who hasn't even played. I mean, well, he's playing in the ACL right now, so whatever. I think Emerson, Young, Montez, Farmelo, in some order, most likely to be long-term Mariners.
Matthew wants to know, I am sure all the questions will be the same, so change it up a little bit. The draft starts on Sunday. What is your dream scenario for number 15? Who are other names that interest you at that spot or later in the draft? I mean, this farm could really use some pitching, and there's a decent group of college pitchers that are supposed to go at the top of the draft. If one of those guys fell to you, that would be great. Trey Savage is a guy that I would look at in that regard. I don't think he ends up getting there, and I think they probably end up going with a bat of some kind because all the pitchers just go because there's a pretty steep cliff after the first few pitchers. But yeah, if one of those guys ends up falling to them, specifically Savage, I'd be very happy with that.
Yeah, he's probably like my my prize, like my Harry Ford for this draft would be if he fell to you there. I really like Seaver King. He's a bat out of Wake Forest. Just a ton of tools.
It's a great name, by the way.
Yeah, it is an absolute baseball name. I really like him. Again, just tons of tools. Plays third base, or he's going to play in the infield. So you have to like that. Obviously, college hitter is probably the fastest moving option for you. So if you want somebody who's going to be big league ready relatively soon, that would be him. But I think for me, Savage is like my 101, like of the guys you could realistically get. I mean, obviously you'd want Bazana, but not going to happen. I think he's really interesting. Seaver King again is probably my number 2. Brody Brecht is another guy, college arm, big stuff. Doesn't really know where it's going half the time. So that's, a questionable Mariner selection there. There is a switch pitcher who keeps on getting linked to the Mariners. I try and pronounce his name here. Girangelo Cigente, Cijntje.
Okay.
You tell me.
Sure.
But yes, he's actually a switch pitcher, and he's actually a good pitcher. I think he probably ends up being a right-handed pitcher. Maybe he'll throw left-handed on occasion, but the fastball velo is better right-handed. The slider's better right-handed. The control's better right-handed. Slider or the left-handed thing is just kind of it's neat. It's there. So like maybe he breaks it out on occasion, but I think mostly he's going to be a right-handed pitcher. Good athlete, obviously. Pretty good stuff. 21 years old. On the smaller side, 5'11", 6 foot, about 200 pounds, but still pretty well built for that size. So yeah, there's a few guys. I think Savage is my number one. Like if I could pick anybody who might actually be there, he'd be my guy. I also like Seaver King. Jack Mayfield is interesting. And this pitcher whose name I still haven't learned how to pronounce because it is just, you tell me.
Scrabble. The new Scrabble.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, it's going to be a good draft. I feel really confident the Mariners are going to nail this. And basically, I think there's a real shot that they do go high school arm in this draft. It is the only demographic they have not selected in the first round would be high school arm. So they could do it here, but I think their preference would be a college pitcher. It's just a matter of one of the guys that they view as worthy of that pick gets to them. And that is up in the air. It is going to be a wild draft. This very well could be a scenario kind of like the Kyle Lewis draft where, everybody in the top 10 has, already pre-agreed to money. And so the top 10 kind of goes haywire, and all of a sudden some players who we didn't think had a shot to get to Seattle are sitting right there for them. So you never really know how these drafts go. If it goes chalk, though, the way most people think it's going to go, Savage is probably going to go 12, 13, somewhere in that range. So Seaver King would be my backup there. I'd be really happy with either of those guys.
Next question here from Glenn. How soon do you think we will see Felnin, Celestin, and Modesto? Are they going to wait till next year or move him up when the ACL schedule ends this year? I think he's going to go up to Modesto after the draft. Yeah.
I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't play for the Nuts for at least a couple weeks this year. I don't know if that's immediately after the draft or what have you, but got
by the way,
Mariner news.
Yeah.
That's right, Luis Robert, baby. But anyways,
this just turns into an emergency pod all of a sudden.
Sound the klaxon.
Right.
But anyways, we'll get to that in a second. Yeah. You guys will already know by the time you're listening to this anyways, but
yeah,
I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't play for the Met or for the Nuts at least for 3 or 4 weeks. So maybe not immediately after the draft, but yeah, I'm pretty confident he'll get a cup of coffee there and then he'll start next year in Low A Modesto. So
the Mariners are getting some bullpen help, folks. Gregory Santos has been reinstated from the 60-day IL. We're finally going to get to see what he looks like. And Emerson Hancock has been sent back down to AAA Tacoma to make room for him. It seems like Brian Wu's going to make a start in Anaheim right before the All-Star break. All right, so we are going to answer a couple more questions of yours in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. I know I'm stating the obvious here, but I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, unfortunately, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon, that's LOCKEDON, and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, the Mariners are off today, but they'll get back after it tomorrow with a quick 2-game set down in San Diego. You can catch all the action with the Padres on the Mariners hometown broadcast for SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. We have a question here from CNC Talks, who asks, is there a reason besides pure coincidence that in 3 straight seasons, the Mariners have made solid additions at second base and all of them have been terrible with us? I mean, Yes, but also Adam Frazier was more or less pretty much what he's been for most of his career. Like the year that he had with Pittsburgh, in which he made the All-Star game and then ended up getting traded to San Diego, like that's kind of the outlier. Like Adam Frazier's been a slightly below league average hitter for most of his career, and that's pretty much what he was with the Mariners. And at the very least, he has one of the most important hits in Mariners history, which is significantly more impactful than anything Jorge Polanco and Colton Wong have done. So yeah,
only because Andres Munoz blew that save in Minnesota.
Sure, yeah, that would have been equal to a go ahead hit in the biggest comeback in Mariners playoff history, but
tie, the game still would have been tied. So like if he hadn't gotten the hit, it's not like they would have lost. Colton Wong gave them the game-winning hit. He got taken away from him.
Sure.
He got Jake Lambed
in a random game in the middle of June or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, so second base has obviously been a pretty rough spot for the Mariners.
Can't even go back further than that. D. Strange Gordon.
Yeah. Oof. We'll always have the COVID year from Dylan Moore.
Darn right we will.
The lone exception. In the post Robinson Cano era at second base for the Seattle Mariners. Yeah.
60 games with Dylan Moore.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't think you can just chalk it up to coincidence at this point. We've talked about this a little bit on our Patreon that
I think it's a coincidence that they all play second base.
Sure, that. Yeah. But like something is clearly, and I talked about this today or yesterday on my Twitter as well, like something is clearly off with the Mariners major league player evaluation. I don't know what it is, but they have more access than we do. Obviously, they have access to players and agents and teams and all that stuff. They also have their own data models, etc. Whatever they're using to ultimately identify these guys and make decisions to ultimately go after them. Whatever that is, they need to reevaluate in the offseason, because more often than not, it's not working. Now, there's some instances where it's not as much of a disaster as like the Colton Wongs of the world, right? Where it's like Teoscar Hernandez, Jesse Winker, those guys were, just kind of like Jesse Winker was like pretty much a league average back. Teoscar Hernandez was slightly above league average, but he wasn't the guy that you thought you were acquiring. And then there's a couple of exceptions like Luke Raley, right? Where they've hit on Luke Raley. Gino, yeah, for the 1 year at least. Victor Robles, of course. Yeah. But for the most part, yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, for the most part, they've really
Victor Robles on this podcast.
They've really, really struggled though to add established major leaguers to the mix and have them actually succeed. So whatever it is that they're using to, come to the conclusion like this is our guy, we need to acquire this guy, whatever that something in there is flawed. Clearly, it's not all that, right? At the end of the day, like the players also have to execute for whatever reason they're not. But yeah, I think it's certainly at least some of the blame has to fall on the front office. Connor wants to know, and this is our final question of the day, give me a reason why Ty France should be on this roster over Tyler Locklear other than purely due to financial obligations to France. I don't have one.
Locklear hasn't been very good since he got sent back down. But
I still don't have one.
Well, I do. He's not better than Jason Vossler.
Can Jason Vossler play first base?
Yeah, I can play first base.
I mean, how hard could it be? Tell him, Wash.
Not as hard as Ty France makes it look. Yeah. Here's the funny thing about France too. Like, even if you're like, oh, we think he's close, like A, he's not. But also B, like, okay.
Yeah.
Send him down to Tacoma because he's not going to refuse that assignment. Because if he does, he forfeits the remainder of about $3 million. He's not getting that on the open market. He's going to go down to Tacoma. So you can still have Ty France in your organization. And yet he's not, hurting you at the major league level. So if it really is like, oh, well, we think Ty can do this. He's working on something here with this and this. Cool. He can work on it in Tacoma. You have an opportunity to do that. Send him down. He has options. And I don't think he has 5 years left. So I don't even think he can refuse the assignment. But even if he can, he's not going to, because he's not going to forfeit that money. So yeah, the funny thing about Ty is that that's not a permanent thing. You could send him down for a month, see if he figures something out and be like, oh, okay, now let's give this a shot. But sure doesn't seem like they're going to, because he's making some money. But I think Polanco, Haniger, and France, they can all go. Like, they can all be DFA'd tomorrow, and I don't think anybody would argue or complain or anything like that. So Locklear, I don't know if Locklear is the guy they should call up, because again, he hasn't been very good since they sent him back down. And I don't know if I just don't know if he's the best option. But I do think that a guy like Jason Fossler, who has some major league experience and is actually hitting pretty well down in Tacoma, I think that's the guy. And it's also a wake up call to the clubhouse, to just like, hey, you're just not guaranteed at bats just because you're making some money. So yeah, we have to send down. It's basically, you're trying to do the same thing you did with Mike Ford last year, right? You're just looking for any kind of shot in the arm to the offense. And you're like, well, he's hitting down in Tacoma, let's give him a shot.
Well, and I think at this point there just has to be consequences for how poorly the offense is playing.
Yeah.
Like, whether it makes sense or not, whether you have better options in Tacoma or not, like, there just has to be consequences.
Right. And again, there's only, like, you can't send down Julio Rodriguez. That's not happening. Like, let's live in the realm of reality here. You're not DFAing JP Crawford. You're not sending down Cal Raleigh. Again, let's try and stay in the realm of reality here. DFAing a $7 million first baseman who's a below average hitter, who also can't field or run or throw or hit for any power, but he's well liked in the clubhouse. That's exactly the type of guy you send a message with. So yeah, France probably shouldn't be here tomorrow. I'd be shocked if any of the three guys I mentioned actually do get DFA'd or demoted or whatever. I'd be really shocked if they weren't all on the roster, but it doesn't mean that that's the right thing to do. I do think that they should send a message somewhere. And unfortunately, I think Ty France, just because he's making the least amount of money and because he has options and he can't refuse the assignment, that's the guy that you would send down to kind of send that message. I mean, if you're doing it with Luis Urias, you kind of can't justify not doing it with Ty France.
Yeah, you're paying Luis Urias $5 million to hit in AAA.
Plus, at least Urias was giving you something. He's giving you some defense and he's giving you some power. Ty France ain't giving you nothing. Basically, he started getting hit by pitches again. Yeah, cool. A Ty France walk is not as valuable as other people's walks because he's not going first to third on a base hit. He's the
slowest player on the team.
Yeah. So he needs to hit home runs if he's going to hit 220. And he's not doing it. So yeah, there's really no reason for France to be on this roster. But I'd be absolutely shocked and pleasantly surprised if he wasn't on this roster come tomorrow.
All right, so that is going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tiding Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tiding Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.